56 million years ago, something burned enough fossil fuels to spike global temperatures by 8 degrees and leave a carbon signature identical to modern industry. The problem is that humans would not exist for another 55 million years. So either nature accidentally invented coal plants, or we need to have a very uncomfortable conversation about what is buried in the geological record. This whole investigation started in 2017 at the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies. An astrophysicist named Adam Frank walked into a climate scientist's office to discuss finding alien civilizations on distant planets. Frank wanted to talk about detecting industrial fingerprints on exoplanets, chemical signatures that would prove someone out there had invented factories and immediately regretted it. But Gavin Schmidt, the climate scientist sitting across from him, asked a question that derailed the entire conversation. How do you know we are the only time there has been a civilization on our own planet? Which is the kind of question that makes you set down your coffee very carefully. Frank had spent years developing methods to detect alien industry by looking for the same signatures Earth's civilization leaves behind. Schmidt's question flipped the entire game. Instead of looking up at distant planets through billion-dollar telescopes, what if the answer was buried directly beneath our feet? Here is where the data stops being cooperative. 56 million years ago during the PETM, global temperatures spiked by 5 to 8 degrees Celsius in a geological eye blink. When scientists pulled deep-sea sediment cores from that period, they found something that should not exist in rocks that old. A carbon isotope signature identical to burning fossil fuels. The technical term is a negative carbon isotope excursion, which is academia speak for something ate all the light carbon, and we are pretending this is fine. The ratio of carbon-13 to carbon-12 drops by more than 3 per mil. This is called the Suez effect. It is the calling card of industrial activity, except this signature appears in rocks from 56 million years ago, which is 55,999,700 years before humans figured out how to make fire without rubbing sticks together. When you burn fossil fuels, you release carbon that has been locked underground for millions of years. This ancient carbon is depleted in carbon-13. Every climate scientist recognizes this pattern. It is how we prove current warming is human-caused. The chemistry is ironclad. The PETM shows the exact same signature. Schmidt himself noted that whether warming is caused by humans or natural forces, the fingerprints look very similar, which is a magnificently diplomatic way of saying we found our own industrial fingerprints in rocks from before we existed. Deep-sea organisms called benthic foraminifera experienced extinction. Rates of 30 to 50% during the PETM. Their shells dissolved in acidifying oceans, leaving behind a thin, dark layer of organic-rich mud. A geological crime scene, the same pattern we are currently engineering in real time, which is either an incredible coincidence or the universe's idea of a very dark joke. At this point, you have two options. Accept that nature spontaneously mimicked industrial civilization 56 million years early, or start wondering what else we have been confidently labeling as natural. But here is the obvious question. If an industrial civilization existed 56 million years ago, where is the evidence? Where are the ruins? The fossilized smartphones? The petroleum industry has drilled millions of boreholes through millions of years of strata. A century of drilling, economic motivation to notice absolutely anything unusual. They have found exactly 0 ancient iPhones, which seems like proof of non-existence until you realize the planet destroys evidence faster than civilizations can leave it. Earth's surface is not an archive. It is a document shredder with tectonic plates for blades. If you want to see more cases where the official story collapsed under scrutiny, hit subscribe. Currently, less than 1% of Earth's surface is urbanized. Even a planet-spanning civilization would compress into a stratigraphic layer a few centimeters thick. We are a geological footnote written in disappearing ink. Tectonic activity recycles ocean crust every 170 to 200 million years. Subduction zones drag entire coastlines into the mantle where they melt at temperatures that would vaporize your smugness about being apex predators. The oldest extensive patch of Earth's surface is the Negev Desert at 1.8 million years old. Anything older has been ground to powder or dragged into the mantle. The Earth does not keep receipts. The official explanation for the PETM blames volcanic activity or methane, clathrates. Both are plausible if you squint hard enough and really want to avoid rewriting geology textbooks. Volcanism is safe. Ancient industrial collapse requires explaining to your department head why you are about to make every petroleum geology textbook obsolete. But neither quite matches the isotope profile with the precision we observe. The PETM signal is uncomfortably identical to industrial combustion. Geologists point out that the PETM unfolded over roughly 5,000 years, while the modern industrial spike is only 300 years old. Except we have no natural event as abrupt as the Anthropocene. The PETM is the closest match, and it is still 17 times slower, which raises the question nobody wants to ask. What if the PETM was not actually slow? What if we are just looking at it through instruments that cannot see fast enough? Sediment cores compress time. A centimeter of mud might represent 1,000 years. If an industrial pulse happened over a few centuries 56 million years ago, our instruments would smooth it out. It is like watching a car crash through a camera that takes one photo per hour. You would conclude the vehicle gently merged with the wall, but let us assume the skeptics are right. Let us assume no ancient civilization existed. That still leaves us with what evidence should remain. Plastics, for example. Modern beaches in Hawaii now contain plastiglomerates, new rock types formed when melted plastic fuses with sand and basalt. Schmidt noted that plastic in deep ocean environments might survive millions of years. We have also permanently altered the planet's nitrogen cycle. The Haber-Bosch process has doubled fixed nitrogen on Earth, creating a permanent isotopic signal. Unless future geologists attribute it to some novel bacterial process, which brings us to the core problem. We are remarkably good at inventing natural explanations for things that absolutely should not be natural. Take technofossils. Mineralized impressions of manufactured objects. The problem is that fossilization requires specific conditions that almost never occur. Paleontologists estimate that only 0.1% of all species ever fossilize, which means if you are hoping to find an ancient civilization through fossil smartphones, you are statistically better off winning the lottery while being struck by lightning during a total solar eclipse. If we find one Tyrannosaurus rex skeleton, we assume thousands existed. If we find 0 ancient smartphones, we assume they never existed. But a civilization lasting 100,000 years could easily leave 0 fossils if preservation conditions never aligned. Railroad systems illustrate this perfectly. Steel rails rust away in thousands of years. Wooden ties rot even faster. The only remnants would be ribbons of weirdly organized granite that future geologists would call unusual fluvial processes. Because admitting someone built a continental scale transportation network before mammals evolved requires explaining that to your tenure committee, and nobody wants that conversation. But wait, we just spent 5 minutes explaining why we should not find evidence, which is convenient, right? Because if you can explain away every absence of evidence with preservation bias and tectonic recycling, you have built yourself an unfalsifiable theory, which is not science. That is a security blanket with footnotes. The great silence in the drilling record could mean nobody was ever there, or it could mean we have constructed the perfect intellectual defense mechanism. So let us try a different approach. Instead of looking for what is missing, let us look for what should be impossible to destroy. Radioactive isotopes, for example. Plutonium-244 has a half-life of 80.8 million years. It has no natural terrestrial source outside of supernovae or nuclear weapon detonations. Finding it in sediment layers is the geological equivalent of finding a signed confession. And yet plutonium-244 does appear in the geological record in trace amounts. So does curium-247. The official explanation blames supernova fallout, which would be convincing if the concentration patterns actually matched supernova distribution models. But they do not quite fit. The signature is there. The geometry is wrong. Then there is Oklo. 2 billion years ago in Gabon, West Africa, natural nuclear fission reactors operated for several 100,000 years. We know this because the isotope ratios are wrong when we dig up the ore today. The uranium is spent, and the fission products remained geologically contained for 2 billion years, proving that radioactive signatures can survive essentially forever. Nature accidentally built nuclear reactors 2 billion years ago. If natural reactors can exist and be detected 2 billion years later, artificial reactors from an ancient civilization should be trivially easy to spot. So where is it? Here is where the chemistry gets interesting. Life on Earth is obsessively monochromatic. It uses only left-handed amino acids and right-handed sugars. Finding molecules with both forms, race mixtures, is the chemical equivalent of finding a coin that landed on its edge and stayed there for 1 million years. It suggests non-biological synthesis. If we found ancient racemic steroids, that would prove industrial chemistry existed before humans. Except organic molecules have the structural integrity of a conspiracy theory. A few million years and they break down into simpler hydrocarbons indistinguishable from biological sources. But plastics are different. Plastics are the cockroaches of the molecular world. In Norway, scientists discovered peat composed of up to 72% synthetic polymers. Plastic peat. This is entering the permanent geological record right now. Future paleontologists will find layers of plastic-contaminated sediment and know something profoundly unnatural occurred, unless they do not recognize it, unless they see the polymers and invent some novel biological process to explain them. And this brings us to the sustainability paradox. The more successful a civilization becomes at renewable energy, the smaller its geological footprint. Solar panels and wind turbines leave minimal isotope signatures compared to coal plants. A perfectly sustainable civilization that lasted 1 million years would be completely invisible to future geologists. We are searching for industrial catastrophes, while the smart civilizations tiptoed past us in the fossil record wearing geological camouflage. The only civilizations we can detect are the failures. The ones that burned their fossil fuels, acidified their oceans, and collapsed before figuring out sustainability. If the PETM was caused by an ancient industrial civilization, it means they failed at the exact same test we are currently taking. Drop your theory in the comments. Does the official explanation actually fit the evidence, or are we missing something blindingly obvious? But let us talk about what happens after collapse. Urban areas would be ground to sand or buried beneath miles of sediment faster than you can say geological timescale. Concrete crumbles, steel oxidizes, glass devitrifies. Most infrastructure would vanish so thoroughly that future geologists would conclude it never existed. This is called taphonomic bias, the systematic destruction of physical records over geological time. We are not examining the complete archive of Earth's history. We are examining whatever survived the shredder. Mark Robinson at NASA noted that the Apollo landing sites will leave no traces in 10 to 100 million years. If the moon cannot preserve evidence for 100 million years despite having no atmosphere, no water, and no tectonic activity, what chance does Earth have? Only a microscopic fraction of infrastructure gets buried where preservation is possible. Within 50 million years, nearly all direct physical evidence would be gone. Except here is the part that should keep geologists awake at night: the resource gap. We are currently mining iron ore from deposits that are billions of years old. Surface coal seams, bog iron deposits, native copper, all the low-hanging fruit of industrialization, were still available when humanity stumbled into the Bronze Age. If someone beat us to the Industrial Revolution by 56 million years, they should have grabbed all the easy resources first. The fact that surface resources were still there suggests either we are genuinely first, or the geological cycle replenishes resources better than we thought. Both explanations work mathematically. Neither is satisfying, and that should bother you. The petroleum industry has examined the geological record more thoroughly than any crime scene in history. And in a century of drilling, they have reported precisely 0 unambiguous technosignatures. The Great Silence is so complete it has become its own form of evidence. It is either proof of non-existence or proof that we have systematically trained ourselves not to recognize evidence that contradicts our models. Corporate databases are proprietary. The incentive structure does not reward paradigm-shifting discoveries. It rewards finding oil and not asking philosophically disturbing questions, which brings us to the Fermi paradox. Enrico Fermi asked in 1950, if intelligent life is common in the universe, where is everybody? The Drake equation attempts to calculate how many detectable civilizations should exist. One of the variables is longevity. How long does a technological civilization survive? If the answer is only a few centuries, the galaxy could be full of collapsed experiments we will never detect. The brief window hypothesis suggests civilizations exist as brief flashes in cosmic time. If civilizations only last centuries, their geological signatures would be nearly invisible. You would need to drill into exactly the right thin layer of sediment to find evidence. The probability approaches 0, even if dozens of civilizations rose and fell. The universe is either full of civilizations smart enough not to advertise their locations, full of ruins too degraded to detect, or experiencing a catastrophic failure rate at the industrialization stage. Place your bets on which scenario helps you sleep. But here is where it gets genuinely strange. Some researchers have proposed the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis, the idea that unidentified anomalous phenomena might be evidence of an ancient Earth civilization that achieved space travel before collapsing. Maybe they built habitats in the outer solar system where tectonic recycling does not exist. Maybe their robotic descendants still monitor the solar system. The ancient aliens hypothesis gets laughed out of academic conferences. But ancient terrestrials is mathematically identical, just with better geology. Same premise, same lack of physical evidence. The only difference is we are accusing our own planet of hiding its history. Pentagon UAP footage shows objects exhibiting physics-defying acceleration, which suggests sensor errors, classified aircraft, or something else. But some reports date to pre-industrial eras. Medieval manuscripts, ancient petroglyphs. Either humans have been consistently misinterpreting atmospheric events for millennia, or something has operated in our airspace far longer than recorded history. But let us return to facts. Earth's geological record shows multiple hyperthermal events. The PETM is just the most famous. The Torsy-Ian event 183 million years ago. The Aptian event 120 million years ago. Each shows rapid warming, carbon isotope excursions, and extinction pulses. These events occur roughly every 30 to 50 million years, which is either evidence of cyclical volcanic activity on a precise 50 million year timer, or evidence that intelligence is cosmically recurrent and consistently fails the same test. Both explanations fit the data, neither is satisfying. The hyperthermals are too regular to be random volcanic activity. Orbital forcing operates on the wrong time scale. Volcanic activity should be more sporadic. So what is driving the pattern? Maybe nothing. Maybe we are hallucinating patterns because human brains see faces in clouds and conspiracies in coincidence, or maybe the rock record has been screaming at us for a century and we keep inventing increasingly elaborate explanations to avoid listening. Here is what we know for certain. The PETM shows an industrial carbon signature 56 million years before industry existed. The physical evidence has been systematically destroyed by geological processes. The few markers that should survive are either absent, misinterpreted, or locked in proprietary databases. We are left with two scenarios. Both are disturbing. Scenario A: we are the first and only technological civilization in Earth's history. We are guardians of consciousness in a universe of 400 billion stars, most probably sterile. Every decision determines whether intelligence survives or disappears entirely. Scenario B: we are the latest iteration in a series of industrial experiments that keep producing the same result. The rock record is not a natural archive. It is a repository of collapsed attempts. The PETM was not a volcanic anomaly. It was the isotope signature of whoever came before us, burning their resources and vanishing into geological noise. And we are following the same script. No matter what we do, we are generating the geological fingerprint for the next cycle. The question is whether anyone will be around to find it 56 million years from now, or whether they will make the same mistakes we are making right now. If this investigation disturbed your sense of reality, share it with someone who needs their worldview shaken. The PETM signature remains unexplained by natural processes with the precision we observe. The absence of artifacts is explained by processes that sound reasonable until you realize they are unfalsifiable. The timing of the hyperthermal events remains disturbingly regular. You are either looking at the most elaborate natural coincidence in planetary history, or evidence of something systematically erased by geology and our trained inability to recognize it. Both explanations work mathematically. Neither lets you sleep well. Sweet dreams. You are going to need them. If you made it this far, you are either disturbed, fascinated, or already typing your counter-argument. Do that. Tell me where the theory breaks down or what evidence I missed. Hit subscribe if you want more investigations where the official story does not survive contact with actual data. Share this with someone who thinks they have geology figured out. And if you are now lying awake at 3 in the morning wondering whether we are the first civilization or just the latest iteration doomed to repeat the same mistakes, welcome to the club. The coffee is terrible. The existential dread is complimentary, and the questions never stop. Thanks for watching. See you in the next investigation, assuming we survive long enough to make one.